Hi, I'm gone. No, I'm not dead. Yes, I know the next video in the series is supposed to be on how to transition. We'll get to that later, and there are tons of videos on that. For now, I really want to help people that are currently a bit past the absolute learning phase on how to drift, and work more on how to help people with tips that as an experienced driver, you don't even think about. So let's see, you feel like you've been drifting for a long time, there's nothing left to improve. You've been drifting for a year or two, you have a Logitech wheel or Thrustmaster wheel, or you're thinking about your next step, and it's obviously to go direct drive, maybe even have a direct drive. Want to get triple monitor set up or VR, you want all the bells and whistles. And if your setup doesn't have a Gooch Cooler 9000, how the hell are you gonna do a backy? Alright, listen, I get it. Everyone wants that Sim Magic 30 Newton meter wrist breaker so they can drift better. But do you actually need it to improve? What if you could improve right now? What if you could just do a couple things to bring you from spinning out on Brooklyn Park and be closer to Alan Hines, or Zach O'Sullivan, or Chelsea DeNofa, or Von Gittin Jr., or Ali? Let's start with all of you guys out there on Instagram. All of you. Even me. You're going into CM and clicking that media button, and then looking at that replay you just got of those 30 seconds of gold. Sweet. But how long did it take you to get that one clip? 1 hour? 2? How many runs did you make before getting that one that you wanted others to see? My point is, I know a lot of dudes that post a lot on Instagram or YouTube and are constantly showing their highlights, but how many of you guys are actually looking at your replays objectively? How many times do you look at your replay and go, oh, I could go deeper in this zone. I could have left foot braked later here. I'm lacking proximity compared to others here. Probably very few of you. And I know that, because whenever I get this tip in a video for League of Legends or any other game that you can play online, most of the time, I honestly ignore it. Alright, I'm gonna demonstrate something. This is an old clip of my teammate. He's driving a custom VDC legal car on Riga, and this is from 6 months ago. This is his newest clip from driving there recently. Having replays on the same track that span maybe a month or two apart to highlight where you were and where you're currently at helps a lot with finding things that you need to work on. And it also is a way of showing progress, which in turn will help you guys have a basis of actually acknowledging, yes, I have improved, or I should work on this area more. The other beauty of this is that you can see what other guys are doing if you have an online replay, which means you can also closely observe what other dudes are doing compared to you, and help you figure out potential line differences you might have, or maybe different techniques you could try out. Alright, well, what if you're feeling like you've got nothing left to learn on street cars? You're getting within inches of people's door in tandem instead of feet, and you're able to go for perfect 30 or 40 laps without making a single mistake. If this sounds like you, my suggestion might be to try a new car pack. Specifically something either much lower horsepower or much higher horsepower. I'm either talking less than like 200 horsepower or over 750 horsepower. These cars will require more work to drive at the level at which you can do on WDTS or Gravy Garage, and will require a lot more pedal work and a lot more concentration to make work correctly. With the low horsepower cars, you'll be battling the engine and grip more than you're going to be even trying to keep proximity with your friends, and this will be a great way to practice your consistency with your line as well as with your inputs, as adding too much angle will cause you most likely to slow down or even to stall out the engine. High horsepower cars will also create a very similar situation. I find that for me personally, competition style cars are most fun to drive now because they require so much consistency and commitment in order to drive them. The other thing is that high horsepower cars, your timing is so much tighter than on WDTS or Gravy, meaning that you'll need to be very good at making split-second decisions and noticing very small details in the lead car in order to get good transitions in the chase. What do you do when your car isn't available on a server and you want to join? Do you just drive solo? Do you find another server that most likely will have less drivers just so you can drive your main car? Or do you pick a different car but find you struggle in other cars? Maybe you need to learn how to set up cars. I had a friend once tell me that they never set up their car and they only use default settings because they like to drive the car the way the car wants to be driven, rather than set up the car to drive the way they want to drive it. For the most part, this is perfectly fine. But if you want to optimize your driving, take part in any competitive drifting, or maybe figure out why the car you like the look of doesn't drive the way you want, I would totally recommend that you learn how to set up cars. Now, due to the fact that this is a huge topic that really deserves its own video, I won't really get into too much detail here. But what I will do for you now is give you my setup guide that I will drop in the description down below. Setting up cars can be super important if you find that you're struggling with your car, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can sometimes make things even worse than they would be on a default setup. In fact, you remember that guy I showed the clip of earlier? This video of him is actually on his old setup, which is the reason why we even met. Because I noticed that he was fighting the car really hard, and he wanted me to try out his car. Well, in doing so, I found out that the setup he was running was so bad, I've actually stored it in my memory as the worst setup I've ever seen in sim drifting. And after going from his old setup to something I made for him, he was able to achieve this run.
And we will get everybody pushed through. Whew, some massive angle coming around that first corner. Definitely whipping it out there on the track. Here we go into our final clip 6 here. Little tap on the way out, but should fare him very well there for Daniel Camacho.
This is the power of having a good setup compared to having a bad setup, and his driving is night and day between the two videos, and they were taken within 1 week of each other. Finally, we have two short ones that I think are gonna hurt some guys. I'm gonna say this very clearly, and I really don't want to point fingers or be mean, but listen. If you have ever said, insert expletive here, my car just won't insert excuse here, you're really gonna have a hard time improving. But that's alright, because I made a very powerful little flowchart for you. I call it the fucky wucky chart. How this works is that every time you get mad and you're about to say, ugh, my car just won't insert excuse here, please refer to the chart instead and go through the list of questions it will provide you. Then, when you're done, I want you to think about that situation and think about how you could have prevented that situation from happening in the first place. If you're the kind of guy that needs this, then you will definitely find that this is something that will improve your driving a lot. The second thing is that I see a bunch of dudes who do this one thing and it really holds them back. And that's using handbrake or left foot braking literally every corner, even when they don't need to. I want you guys to think about your handbrake and brakes as glue. Think about your car as like a carpenter's workshop. I want you to think about every corner as a piece of wood. Just because you can attach wood together with glue doesn't mean you need to do it in every situation. Look, there's lots of times where nails or screws, or even times where if you cut things so fucking perfectly, you don't even need to add anything to a joint. If you guys are using e-brake on every transition, that means you need to learn how to transition better. If you're using left foot braking to get into every zone, maybe you need to shift up or look into your setup. If you're constantly using e-brake to link corners, maybe you can find a different line that will allow you to link the corners together while on power. There's always something you can do. Alrighty guys, that's it. Remember to always push yourself. Have a good one.